Performance management involves all of the human resource functions associated with evaluating and rewarding employee performance. Performance evaluation programs serve to guide human resource decisions, reward and motivate employees, promote personal development, identify training needs, and integrate human resource functions. The American National Standards Institute publishes a set of guidelines explaining how performance management should be implemented. This standard assumes that organizational effectiveness is enhanced when all employees know and share the strategic goals of the organization and know how to achieve their individual goals. According to this new standard, effective performance management involves three processes: goal setting, performance reviews, and performance improvement plans. Deciding what to evaluate is one of the most difficult aspects of developing a performance evaluation system. Deciding what to evaluate is, in part, a value judgment. The personal values of the individuals who design the evaluation system will be reflected in it. Most people agree that quantity and quality of performance are important dimensions to evaluate, but there is less argument about traits such as appearance, initiative, and enthusiasm. Most people say outcomes are more important than behaviors. They are interested in measuring results. Most performance evaluations focus on behaviors rather than results, especially for managers. Behaviors are easier to measure, while outcomes are often contaminated by outside factors, such as economic conditions. If the evaluations are used for compensating employees and other personnel actions, their focus should be on outcomes. But if they are used primarily for personal development, they should focus largely on behaviors. Rater error and biases are two of the main reasons why performance evaluations sometimes miss the mark. It is important to understand that missing information, improper or incorrect information, and one's subjective views can all affect the rating one is given in their evaluation. Proper training of supervisors and managers can help alleviate these types of issues. Classification procedures are probably the easiest procedures to use, but they are also the most unreliable and biased unless they are carefully developed and closely monitored. Classification procedures simply categorize individuals into one of several categories, such as high versus low, or outstanding, superior, excellent, good, average, fair, or poor. The objective of ranking is to order a group of employees from highest to lowest along some dimension, usually overall performance. There are three different methods of ranking: straight ranking, alternate ranking, and paired comparisons. Graphic rating scales are the most frequently used procedure for evaluating performance. Graphic rating scales appear in numerous forms and are used to evaluate both performance-related characteristics and personality characteristics. A procedure called rated ranking combines a ranking procedure and a rating process. The employees are first ranked, usually by an alternate ranking procedure, and then each employee is rated on selected scales. The initial ranking imposes limits on the subsequent ratings, since individuals who receive low rankings should also receive lower ratings than those ranked higher. The rated ranking procedure appears to reduce problems of subjective bias, halo effect, leniency, strictness, central tendency, and unreliability. Rating scales can use either a continuous or discrete scale for each item. A continuous scale means that the evaluator can choose any point between the two extremes for rating an individual. A discrete scale requires an evaluator to use one of a specified number of categories. Examples of several types of scales are shown on the slide. Discrete scales usually have at least 3 points and sometimes more than 30 points. The optimal number of categories is about 7, although experienced evaluators sometimes prefer as many as 10. The forced choice technique consists of a number of statements arranged in pairs as shown on the slide. For each pair, the evaluator must pick the one statement that is the most descriptive of the performance of the person, or for negative statements, the statement that is least descriptive. The pairs of statements are so designed that both statements appear equally favorable or equally unfavorable, but one statement is actually more descriptive of an outstanding or poor performer. In other words, the statements in each pair have equal social desirability, but unequal discriminability. The actual value or weighting of the statements is kept secret from the evaluators to prevent deliberate bias on their part. The evaluators cannot slant the rating to make the final score appear in any desired way. The evaluators are essentially reporters who check the statements that best describe an individual's behavior. The scoring of the statements is done in the Human Resource Office. A weighted checklist consists of a list of behaviors that evaluators use to describe the performance of employees. A checklist can be developed by obtaining a number of statements about employee performance from critical incident descriptions. After a comprehensive list of these statements has been compiled, a group of judges, either supervisors or job incumbents, evaluate each statement on a 0 to 10 scale regarding its favorability and contributions to organizational effectiveness. When the judges do not agree on the favorability of a statement, it is eliminated. The items on which the judges agree are then weighted on the basis of the average score assigned by the judges. The simplest performance evaluation form is a blank sheet of paper on which supervisors are asked to write a free-form essay describing an employee's performance. These essays typically describe the employee's job responsibilities and then explain how well the employee has performed them. The advantage of a written essay is that it is extremely useful for personal development because it contains specific performance feedback. The disadvantage is that essays cannot be easily compared, which limits their usefulness for some personnel actions. Management by objectives is a performance evaluation procedure because employees are required to develop specific, measurable objectives, and the extent to which they achieve the objectives is evaluated and reported. At the same time, however, MBO is a philosophy of management that emphasizes establishing individual and organizational goals, delegating authority and responsibility, providing feedback and assistance, and evaluating performance. As a philosophy of management, MBO emphasizes a results-oriented style of managing. Management by objectives is primarily a philosophy of management that espouses a positive, proactive way of managing rather than a reactive way. The focus is on predicting and shaping the future of the organization by developing long-range organizational objectives and strategic plans, accomplishing results rather than performing activities, improving both individual competence and organizational effectiveness, and increasing the participation and involvement of employees in the affairs of the organization. One of the best techniques for identifying the most important dimensions of a job is the critical incidents method. As the term implies, critical incidents are simply descriptions by qualified observers of behaviors that are especially effective or ineffective. Such incidents are actual behavioral accounts recorded as stories or anecdotes. They are obtained from supervisors, subordinates, peers, or anyone close to the jobs being studied. Supervisors can be asked to take time at the end of each week to describe briefly the behaviors of their subordinates, particularly noting any favorable or unfavorable incidents. Behaviorally anchored rating scales are similar to graphic rating scales, except that the scales are described more accurately by specific behaviors. Behaviorally anchored rating scales are typically developed using the critical incidents technique. Some critical incidents are descriptions of especially effective or ineffective behaviors. The best characteristics to include in an evaluation are those identified by the critical incidents method. An example of a behaviorally anchored rating scale is shown on the slide. A newer rating method similar to bars is called behavioral observation scales. An advantage of this method over bars is that it asks the rater only to describe the frequency of behavior rather than to evaluate the quality of performance. The evaluator simply records the frequency that various behaviors were observed, always, frequently, occasionally, seldom, or never, without deciding whether the behaviors were good or bad. Performance appraisals are more accurate and useful when the evaluations come from sources closest to the person being rated. Assessors need adequate opportunity to observe behavior. There are several types of appraisals, such as supervisor appraisal, peer appraisal, and subordinate appraisal. The purpose of the evaluation should be to provide information for making important decisions. Some decisions, such as pay increases and personal development programs, should be part of the performance evaluation process. Other decisions, such as promotions, are usually made at different times, but performance information should be considered when these decisions are made. Without a formal evaluation program, employers cannot defend their decisions to hire, fire, promote, discipline, or compensate. A defensible procedure should satisfy the following criteria: identify objective, job-related criteria, document performance events, communicate performance standards, use reasonable care, and train evaluators.